Ka'ai, and I have the honor of serving as the executive director of both the White House Initiative as well as the President's Advisory Commission on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. And I'm thrilled to welcome you to this special introduction to the White House Fellows Program, which is being hosted by our White House Initiative in collaboration with the White House Fellows Foundation and Association. For those of you who are not familiar with the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, or what we call WHIAANHPI for short, President Biden signed Executive Order 14031 in May of 2021 to reestablish and reinvigorate this historic initiative within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and we are co-chaired by two members of the President's Cabinet, HHS Secretary Javier Becerra and U.S. Trade Representative Ambassador Tai. Our primary objective is to advance equity, justice, and opportunity for our diverse AA and NHPI communities all across the country, whether that be tackling health disparities or supporting AA and NHPI students. We have a very broad mandate to address the needs of our diverse communities. Now, the White House Fellows Program is one of the most prestigious public leadership development programs in the country. And for nearly 6 decades, it has sought to identify, train, and equip the next generation of senior leaders in business, government, medicine, academia, and the armed forces. Selected individuals typically spend a year working as a full-time paid fellow to senior White House staff, cabinet secretaries, and other top-ranking government officials, gaining firsthand experience in the process of governance. So this webinar is part of a larger effort to ensure that our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities know about this incredible program. And we really encourage all of those who are interested in learning more about the art of leadership and public service to apply. The country has always needed you, but the current moment particularly calls on more of our community members from the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community to step up and ensure that our voices are represented in the halls of government. From day one, the president and vice president have made it a priority to advance equity and create an administration that looks like America. And we are working to ensure that communities like ours, who have not always had a seat at the table, can help to inform and better shape our nation's policies. Through the White House Fellows Program and other opportunities, you can do your part to address inequities and help to craft meaningful solutions to our nation's toughest issues. So mahalo nui loa. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope that you find this event insightful and that you will consider applying for the White House Fellows Program. We have a really great program in store for you today. So now I would like to turn things over to Ray Onishi, who is a former White House Fellow from the Obama administration, where he was a fellow from 2015 to 2016. So Ray will provide more in-depth overview of the program and serve as today's moderator. He is currently a state court judge in California and helps to lead outreach and recruitment to AA and NHPI communities on behalf of the alumni of the White House Fellows Program. So without further ado, Ray, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Crystal, and good evening, everyone. So happy to be here and so excited to be able to speak with you all. The White House Fellowship is a transformative experience for fellows who are able to partake in the experience. And we wanted to share that opportunity with everyone who's joining as the application deadline approaches. And so we have an exciting webinar that will both give an introduction to what the fellowship is all about and why it's such a meaningful opportunity. And then we will also have a part of the webinar focused on tips and other advice and guidance about the application and selection process. To start, we wanted to have actually introduce a very special message from a former White House Fellow commissioner, that is somebody who serves on the President's Commission on White House Fellowships and helps choose White House Fellows. That is journalist and TV personality and author Lisa Ling. And so we're going to play that message for you right now.
I had the great privilege of serving on the Commission on White House Fellows under the Obama administration. And I had the opportunity to interact with some brilliant and socially active individuals who were applying for the program and would later go on to become White House Fellows. And it really is such a unique program that allows its fellows to occupy a front row seat at the highest levels of government. And I really would like to see more members of our community apply, because I think we've recognized over the last couple of years how essential it is for our community to have a presence in all levels of government. Our community is the fastest growing demographic in the United States, and so occupying those seats has never been more urgent and important than now. So hope you will apply. It is such an incredible opportunity, and we need you. We need you sitting at the highest levels.
Thank you so much, Lisa Ling. And again, a huge thanks to the White House Initiative on WHIAANHPI for partnering with us this evening to give you all this webinar. So as I mentioned, we have a panel tonight of alumni from the White House Fellows Program who are going to provide some information about their experiences in the program. And then they're also going to have the chance to provide some insights and advice about the application and selection process. To start, though, I did want to just highlight that there is information in a couple locations to answer many of the questions that you might have about eligibility and other things. And so first, there's the White House Fellows, the actual website of the White House Fellows Program, where the application is located, and we'll provide information about that after this program to all participants. There's also the website of the Alumni Association, that is the White House Fellows Foundation and Association. And if you go to www.WHFF.org, at the very bottom of that page, there is an extensive list of FAQs that address many questions that folks have. And again, we'll send those links after this program. So very excited to introduce our panelists. But before doing that, I want to hand it off to Margarita Colmenares, who is not only a former White House Fellow from 1991-92, but also leads outreach and engagement for the White House Fellows alumni.
Thank you, Ray, and good evening to all. First of all, thank you all for tuning in tonight to listen to our webinar and find out more about this very well-kept secret. And that's one of the reasons that we are hosting this webinar tonight, is hopefully to reach a much broader band, cast a broader net of individuals who might be interested in applying. So I want to share some things with you. Some of this information you will find on our website. But for example, since the inception of the program in 1964, there have now been 879 White House Fellows who have served over a dozen presidential administrations, Republican and Democrat, over nearly 60 years. And I want to share with you a remark by Stuart McLaren. He is the president of the White House Historical Association. And he remarked during a podcast that he hosted with the White House Fellows that we were indeed a continuum of leaders that really transcended administrations from one to the next. Also, again, Ray mentioned our website. He directed you to the bottom of the website. I'm going to direct you to the top of the website. You're going to see a green bar that goes across, and it simply says, click here for Demystify the Application webinar. If by the end of this broadcast, or if you already are very interested in applying, I highly encourage you to go click on that link to see a webinar that was, I believe it was recorded November 8th and has some very interesting information about applying. You also should go seek out our YouTube channel, which has other webinars that we have hosted in the past. Please join our LinkedIn page, join our mailing list to stay in the loop. Those are some of the things I want to make sure that you keep in mind. Most importantly, we truly are seeking leaders from all parts of the country, from all walks of life, from all communities. So if you are one of these leaders who have an interest in public service, you need to think seriously about the White House Fellows Program. The original goal, aim of the program was to equip emerging leaders with knowledge of how governance works at the highest levels in DC, so that they might take that knowledge and inform their future activities, their future lives, their future contributions to society for betterment of our nation. Here's what's on the website as far as eligibility requirements are concerned. You must be a US citizen. Federal employees are not eligible to apply unless you're career military. And you must have completed your undergraduate application by the time of application. However, what you may not find directly written on the website is some of the following. You have to have a demonstrated commitment to both, to public service, but also significant professional and community achievements, because you're going to be required to write about these in your essays. I also would recommend that you have outstanding letters of recommendation. That's part of the package. And you'll read on the website, and as I said earlier, the minimum requirement is a bachelor's degree, but in reality, I believe over 90% of the fellows do have advanced degrees, and or if not that, they have maybe 7 to 10 years or more work experience. So bear that in mind as you prepare your application, as you're thinking about timing, in your own life. In my particular case, I will share with you that I was exactly 34 years old and I had 10 years work experience. But I'm just one person out of the 879. Each one of us has a very different background coming into the program. The program was described by Lisa Ling as a front row to history. And I want to give you one small example of that. I served in 1991-92 at the US Department of Education, but my degree is in engineering and STEM, but I wanted to be at education. And it was a historic moment back in April 92 when my class was visiting the newly emerging country of Ukraine, and we were in Kyiv. And that was the same day that the Rodney King verdict was announced in Los Angeles. My hometown before I became a fellow was Los Angeles. And I remember we were crowded around a small radio listening to the reports of the Rodney King verdict and the subsequent civil unrest. And the thought passed through my head, what am I doing 5,000 miles away when really I should be back home if there was some way I could help? What I didn't know upon my return to the States was that my principal was going to be named the co-chair of the economic recovery for Los Angeles. So as a White House Fellow, this became part of my portfolio. So for each one of us, as you hear the stories tonight, you will see that each of us have a different story to tell, but yet you will find common threads in all of our experiences. So I really hope that you enjoy the rest of tonight's webinar. And thank you, Ray. Back over to you.
Thanks so much, Margarita. I will now introduce our alumni panelists for this evening. First, we have Andy Koo. Andy is a partner at IQT, a venture firm that invests in tech startups for the CIA and other government intelligence agencies. He was a White House Fellow in the Department of Labor in 2017 and 18. And previously, before that, he worked at LinkedIn, Google, and founded a job matching tech startup. We also have Captain Josephine Nguyen. She's currently a captain and physician in the United States Navy, and was a White House Fellow in 2020, 2021 at the Department of Health and Human Services. She is the U.S. Navy Surgeon General's Senior Dermatology Consultant and is currently an executive officer at the Navy Medicine Readiness and Training Command, River. And then we have Sunny Patel, who is a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, currently serving as a senior advisor for children, youth, and families at the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration. Dr. Patel was appointed a White House Fellow in 2021 and served in the 2022 year, and he was at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. He has also served on the faculty at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine and NYU Grossman School of Medicine. So thank you so much to the panelists for coming here. And as Margarita and Crystal mentioned, I was a White House Fellow during the Obama administration and came from state government and served for a year and a half at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. It was a transformational experience for me on so many levels. And when you talk with fellows and alum, they often reference the experience being transformational. I'll start with Dr. Patel. Was that the case for you, and how so?
Yeah, thanks so much, Ray, and thanks to WHIAANHPI and to the White House Fellows Foundation, the commission as well. I think for me, the experience, one day I was seeing kids in the emergency department, and the next day, which also happened to be maybe my first day of the fellowship, I was assigned to the Department of Homeland Security, where my principal was Deputy Secretary John Tian, also a former White House Fellow, and he had asked me to help work on Operation Allies Welcome, which was the Afghanistan response to the evacuation. And the first fellow that I worked with, the first individual I worked with, also happened to be a White House Fellow, Captain Kate Higgins Bloom. And it just turned out, I was like, there are just White House Fellows everywhere. But it turned out, I think one of the very unique aspects of this fellowship was the exposure to high level sort of operations of the federal government, and sort of seeing how policy gets implemented and enacted in real time, and to be able to be part of that process was a world's difference from what I had probably been doing 1 week prior. And so it was transformational in every way possible. And it was just an incredible time for personal growth as well, with my co-fellows, my 18 co-fellows in our 19-person fellowship class.
Thanks, Sunny. Josephine, tell us what the fellowship meant for you and how you grew during your fellowship year.
Thank you for having us, WHIAANHPI, and it's a true honor to meet everyone here. Even if we can't see your faces directly, we're super excited that you're here, interested in the White House Fellowship, and I would really encourage you all, everyone, to apply. Just a little bit of background on myself. I'm a first generation Vietnamese American. My parents immigrated and fled Vietnam in 1975. So I grew up in an environment, and even in the US, in which women were not, Asian women were told to be seen and not heard, and it was frowned upon for women to join the military. And serendipitously, I ended up going to the Naval Academy, and the Naval Academy just taught me a lot about that. Actually, women can be leaders, and especially Asian American women. And I heard one of my friends actually got to be selected to be a White House Fellow, and even when that happened, I actually didn't think I would ever get in. I didn't think I was good enough or successful enough. And now I know that's called imposter syndrome. It's actually more common in women than in men, but both men and women have imposter syndrome, in which they don't think they're worthy of their accolades, and they're worried about being, quote, found out. And so I would really encourage everyone, to be aware of that, to recognize that actually people that are successful like us actually underestimate ourselves commonly, so really, if you have a public servant heart, then and you want to make a difference, and you want to bring what you learn at the highest levels of the federal government back to where you came from or wherever you plan on working, to really help build the rapport between the federal government and then in the private sector, really consider applying for this. And I actually didn't think I would get selected, to be honest with you, and I'm glad I did. I grew tremendously because it helped me realize, like, working hand in hand with some of the leaders at HHS, FDA, CDC, and helping to establish policy and collaborating across the aisles. It really was what it took was humility, hard work, and a willingness to work across the aisles and bring together people to collaborate to get solutions and get things done. So I realized that actually I am a good leader, even though I'm different from other people. I'm a woman, I'm an Asian American. We bring all of that. We bring our culture to the table. And bottom line, we need more Asian Americans, Native Americans, Pacific Islanders in leadership positions, either at the local, state, federal level, because we bring that unique perspective. Just to answer your question, Ray, in a small nutshell. Thank you for the great question.
Thanks so much, Josephine. Thanks for sharing about your own experience. And I agree, it's so important. Part of why we're doing this webinar is to make sure that we get a very diverse set of applicants to the program, and make sure that all the different communities within the larger WHIAANHPI community is just aware of the program and has the chance to apply. Andy, turning to you, very interested in why you applied to the fellowship, and particularly how did your tech background shape your experience?
Yeah, thanks, Ray, and I'm super excited about all the folks who are on this call interested in this program. I applied for this fellowship because I felt like it gave me a chance to serve and specifically work on a problem that I care deeply about. And specifically that problem is helping people get jobs. And Josephine mentioned that we all have our own experiences. We have our own unique gifts. We have our own unique backgrounds. Everybody on the call does. And so the question is, what can you do with those skills, those experiences, those backgrounds to serve and to solve a problem? And so for me, before the fellowship, I was working at LinkedIn. I've got a background in technology. I was born and raised in Silicon Valley, a tech person for my entire career. And specifically when I was at LinkedIn, I was on the team that was building up products to help people get jobs. And in 2017, there was a lot of conversations around artificial intelligence. What does that mean for workers? Does that mean that jobs are going away? There was a huge narrative around our robots taking over jobs. And I was working at LinkedIn at the time, and we were working on our own algorithms and artificial intelligence algorithms. And meanwhile, this conversation, understandably, was out there, and people were understandably very fearful about what was happening to their jobs. And so I felt like I had a unique perspective and background and experience, given my tech background, to work on this problem, and actually to work on the problem in a way to say, you know what? Yes, in some ways, robots can take over jobs, but in other ways, robots don't have to take over jobs. And there's ways in which artificial intelligence can actually help workers. And so when I went to the fellowship program, I worked in the Department of Labor. I was working for the Labor Secretary. And one of the initiatives that I worked on, and with the Labor Secretary I led, was to use artificial intelligence to help people get jobs. And very specifically, it was for military veterans who were transitioning out of the military, and they were having trouble because they had a whole bunch of experiences, but those experiences and those skills were not very well understood by the private sector. So the military folks would have a resume, a really stacked resume, and they would send these resumes out and they would not get calls back because people did not understand the words on the resume, literally. And so we thought, you know what, that sounds like an artificial intelligence problem. In the same way that AI can translate one language to another, from Chinese to English, maybe we can translate military speak to civilian speak. And so in partnership with startups, in partnership with the Veterans Affairs, in partnership with Department of Labor, we built out an algorithm to translate military skills into the civilian skills to help military veterans transition to get jobs that were really well matched to their skills. It was such a meaningful experience for me to be able to take my skills, my background, bring that to the government, and work with many, many different folks on a narrative that I felt really passionate about, in an area that I felt passionate about, and to change that narrative and to give, in this case, a voice and a platform for military folks towards getting jobs.
Oh, thanks, Andy. And the fellowship is not, unlike some other federal programs, the fellowship is not necessarily aimed or geared towards helping to. It's not a program to launch somebody into the federal civil service or even to a long career in federal service. But many fellows after their fellowship year or later on do either continue serving in the federal government or come back and serve in the federal government. And Sunny, you've after your fellowship, you are now serving as the Senior Advisor for Children, Youth, and Families at the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. What role did the fellowship play in you getting that role?
Yeah, thanks so much, Ray. And I think you raise an excellent point that, this is really a leadership fellowship to take sort of the Promethean fire of the learning of the federal government back to, ideally communities that, folks came from, or sort of locales where people were last. I happen to be a case use example that doesn't necessarily follow John Gardner's vision precisely, but I think the sort of place where I do have sort of tracked that has been this sort of aphorism around freedom and responsibility and liberty and duty, and that's the deal. That's the deal of our democracy. That's the deal that comes with the fellowship. And I think for me, the responsibility and duty as a pediatric psychiatrist in the midst of the youth mental health crisis was, where is the action? And the action for me in terms of where I could be making greatest impact was in the federal government, and specifically at SAMHSA, the public mental health agency for our country. And so really it was thinking about where could I best be impactful, and how do I take the learning from the fellowship year in to be able to sort of help implement the change that sort of we need to address the mental health of children, youth, and families in our country.
Thank you. And so all of you have talked about the senior leadership position and that you had as a White House fellow, and the responsibilities and role that you played. One of the aspects of the fellowship that maybe doesn't get as much attention is the relationships that are forged with the other fellows in your class. And Josephine, I think you kind of touched on this in your remarks. Tell us a little bit about your class and that aspect of the fellowship.
What's interesting is my class was interviewed and selected during COVID, and we were the first class to have interviews that were not in person. And so the biggest concern was whether or not our class was going to gel together and get along, because it's such a small group of people that it's imperative for everyone to have that collaborative relationship with each other, because really it's not just about learning at your assignments at the departments, or but it's also learning from each other. because iron sharpens iron. We are there to learn from each other. We are a diverse group of individuals from all different industries and backgrounds, and we're there to challenge each other and make each other grow. And because of that, our class specifically made it a point to spend more time together. And because of COVID, a lot of things were shut down, that we had offsites, we spent weekends together camping. We actually became very, very close. And once a month, we have socials online via Zoom. We actually have one coming up this weekend. And if I needed help from any of these classmates or of co-fellows, I wouldn't hesitate to reach out and call them and get advice, because these people are some of the most brilliant, most experienced people in the nation, and leaders in their own right and in their own area of expertise. And so essentially you have friends for life or family for life. And so and not only that, but then former White House fellows from previous classes, if you reach out to them for any questions, even if they've never met you, the fact that you're a former White House fellow or a current White House fellow, they would drop anything to then answer your question or give you the help you need. So it's definitely a fraternity or a family that will last you a lifetime.
Thank you. And I think all fellows would agree about just the power of the relationships that are formed, and just how much they learn from the other fellows during their year. So we've talked a little bit about the fellowship, and hopefully have given everyone a taste of what the fellowship is like. We now want to turn to the application and selection process, and we will call back the panel to actually help provide some tips and guidance. Before doing that, we want to call Kevin Lavery, the Associate Director of the President's Commission on White House Fellowships. Kevin is going to give a brief overview to everyone of the application and selection process.
Thank you, Ray. Good evening, everyone. And on behalf of Director Rose Vela and the President's Commission on White House Fellows, thank you all for your interest in the program. And thanks also to the initiative and to the Foundation for hosting tonight's event. We're excited to know that there's so many of you who are interested in learning more about this opportunity for a year of service. As Margarita mentioned, there are some preliminary requirements in order to qualify as eligible for the program. First, you must be a U.S. citizen and have a bachelor's degree by the time that you submit your application. Current federal employees are not eligible except for military personnel duty. White House Fellows are selected on a strictly nonpartisan basis, and the Commission seeks applicants from diverse professional backgrounds and lived experiences, as has already been mentioned. Selection as a fellow is a months-long process, starting with the online application, which is open right now, and that runs through January 5th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That application consists of a questionnaire, 5 short essays, a policy proposal, and 3 letters of recommendation. During the first stage of the review, the applications are read by alumni and staff during the month of February. And then in March and April, roughly 100 candidates will be selected to participate as regional finalists and participate in interviews with panels of distinguished local citizens in their region. In May, 30 candidates will then be notified that they've been selected as national finalists to interview in Washington, D.C. With the President's Commission. Selection weekend this year is going to be May 30th through June 1st. 11 to 19 fellows will then be notified in mid-June of their selection, and then the fellowship year will run from late August to late August of 2024 to 2025. You can find the application online at our website, which is whitehouse.gov/get-involved-fellows. And if you have any specific questions about eligibility or logistical questions about the application itself, the selection process, or the program, please do feel free to reach out to our office. We're available online at WhiteHouseFellows at WHO.EOP, as an executive office of the president, .gov. That's White House Fellows, all one word, at WHO.EOP. whitehouse.gov. If someone's in the chat and can drop it there for everyone to see, that would be helpful as well. You can also call us at 202-395-4522. We will pick up. We get lots of phone calls, but if we don't pick up right when you call us back or leave a message, we will get back to you. Again, that information will be made available after the webinar. We'll make sure it gets out to everyone who's in attendance today. And I believe it's also in the chat at this point too. So again, everyone, thank you for your interest, and we look forward to receiving your applications. Back to you, Ray.
Thanks so much, Kevin. So we will begin the next part of our webinar, which is to ask the alumni panel about tips and guidance about the application selection process based on their experiences. And many of you have already started using the Q&A function in the webinar and have begun asking questions, and some of which have actually already been answered. Please continue to do that. And if you haven't submitted a question yet, please feel free to do so. We are monitoring those questions and they are being fed to me as well. So I will we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. So Andy, starting with you, as people start to think about applying to the White House Fellowship, what advice do you give them?
Yeah, I'll distill this into two things. And this was advice that was given to me when I was applying, and I felt like it was very helpful advice. The two things are, one, think about why you want to apply to the fellowship, and two, tell your story. So on the first one, why you want to apply to the fellowship, the way to think about it is to think about, what do you want to do in your life? What problem do you want to solve? How do you want to serve? What do you want to do in your life? And how will the White House Fellowship help you achieve that goal? And if you can answer that for yourself, first of all, it's really important to answer that for yourself, so you know whether the fellowship is the right program for you. And if you can answer that for yourself, that's a great story to tell in the application itself. That's one. Two is tell your story. Everybody has a story. And I think that there is some people might feel compelled to tell only their best story, show their best selves. My advice is actually not to do that, but to talk about your authentic story. In my White House Fellows application, I actually talked about a failure. And I talked about how my failure actually helped me figure out what I wanted to do, and specifically the narrative helping people get jobs. And then I talked about how that failure helped with that mission of helping people get jobs, and then how the White House Fellowship itself would help me figure out how to serve in that capacity. So in sum, figure out why the fellowship, how it'll help you get to the goals that you want to accomplish, and then tell your authentic story.
Thanks so much, Andy. So we've gotten a lot of questions already, and this is a question that frequently comes up just about when, you know, is there an average age and just what part of your career you should think about the fellowship. So timing is key. And Sunny, I don't know if you want to address just, you know, how should someone figure out if the time is right for them?
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent question, and I, you know, not to answer a question with a question, but one of the, and that's like a very shrinky thing to be doing, but really timing is incumbent upon sort of doing introspective work, and which I think sort of dovetails into what Andy was saying of, you know, figuring out what are the things that are driving you, and is this the right moment? I think there's three sort of things that one needs to sort of evaluate for themselves of, like, you know, are there demonstrated sort of leadership sort of experiences that you've had? Have you been able to show commitment to public service? Because that's something that one needs to be able to speak to. And then, is there like a solid sort of strong professional foundation? And often that means, are you done with whatever last stage of training is? And that can be at a different time point for different people. But this is really an early mid-career fellowship, leadership fellowship. And so to be able to be successful in it, I think requires bringing these experiences to the table and being in a place where you feel you can contribute meaningfully and grow. And I think most tangibly, there's a wide age range. So it's not necessarily, one has to be in a specific, a 3-year age range or something of when folks apply, and there's no formal sort of parameters around it. But I think most people are in their early 30s, if I were to sort of be place a guesstimate. And so if that helps people as they're sort of thinking about when the right time is, those would sort of be my framing comments on it.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Sunny. And just to reiterate that there is no formal age requirement or age ceiling. Fellows in my class, the age range spanned from mid-20s to early 40s. And so there's a lot of other factors besides age that are important to consider in terms of when the time is right for you. Josephine, I love how you talked about imposter syndrome. I think it's just such an important issue to address. And what would you say to somebody to help them overcome their hesitation to applying to the White House Fellows Program?
Sure. Ray, I think that everyone who is selected likely thought they wouldn't get selected. And actually there's research that shows that the most successful people underestimate their own capabilities. So it's recognizing that research already shows that, hey, you actually may think that you're not as good, good enough. So why not just apply? And once you've, just dovetailing off what Andy and Sunny said, once you've established that, yes, it's a good time for you. 2, your motivation is altruistic. And then 3, that you have the community service background, then the application process, all the interviews and all the essays and preparing actually is transformative. And everyone that has gone through that process and spending that time thinking about, hey, what do I want to accomplish with my life? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? How would I react in certain situations? That whole process in which you are thinking about yourself and what, how you take, all of that actually helps you grow as a leader. Helps you grow personally, helps you grow professionally. So it's actually a win-win situation, that it doesn't hurt to apply, and hey, you actually have a great chance. And if it's not you, then it has to be someone with your unique background, your unique ethnicity, your unique experiences that we need at the table to make a difference. We need your voice, because if we don't have a diverse group, then it's our country, our people that suffer. So if you think about it that way, it's not really about you, it's about what you can contribute to our country. Then hey, like, why not do it? Like, why not take the time to apply?
Thank you, Josephine. And Andy, I guess similarly, why, from your perspective, should folks in the NHPI community care about this program and apply?
Just to dovetail what Josephine said, this is an opportunity to serve. And I think everybody heard it also from Crystal and from Lisa, which is we have an opportunity, and in many cases an obligation, for our voices to be heard. We also have an opportunity to have a seat at the table at the highest levels. And I think it's an honor to serve at that level, but it's also a responsibility. And the reason why I think we're super grateful that we can have this webinar is for folks from the AA and NHPI community to really hear about this and step up and say, you know what, if we want to have a voice, if our community has to have a voice, then we need to be in these positions. And I also want to say it's not only within government. It's when we go back to our own kind of places from where we came, geographically, or we go back to our own communities, we can also bring our experiences to help serve our own communities as well. And so that kind of going out and then coming back is really, really important. And it's especially important for the AA and NHPI community.
Thanks, Andy. What about letters of recommendation? So this is a really important part of the application, and I think it's helpful perhaps for the audience to hear from fellows about how they thought about letters and who to ask. Does anybody want to address that?
Sure.
Go ahead, Sunny.
I think really the key is to have people speak, about you who actually know you. And I think the impulse can be to, have somebody with a prestigious title or something like that, and try to stack letters like that. And I think one of the things that came across for me was during the application process is people who can actually speak to who you are as a person and the attributes that you might be able to contribute to this program really strengthen one's application. And so that's what I would sort of solve for.